So, firstly, the verdict is, of course, proposition. So, congratulations to proposition. Again, secondly, with the general feedback, I feel like this is an average debate to below average because, like, the main reason why is most importantly because of engagement, right? Even though proposition provides a lot of materials, reasoning, and impact. However, opposition, you guys don't really engage with their side as much and you lack a lot of mechanism, which I will talk more under the reasoning. Second of all is on POI, so there's no POI in this debate. It's highly encouraged that teams ask POI a lot more for higher engagement, and this can also affect your speaker score as well in case that you ignore it. Other than that, let's come to the reasoning. So I believe in this debate, there are three weighing metrics. First of all is on what should be considered the best strategy for Vietnam as a country and long-term relationships. Second of all is on possibility and likelihood, whether it's actually possible or not, given your claims. And lastly is which proves to be a better country or alternative for Vietnam overall. So the third clash is the most debated clash in this debate, and which is also the one that I will also analyze right now. So first of all, proposition. They come here and they analyze a lot. Firstly, they talked about how the main metric in this debate is that how can you actually benefit the Vietnamese, because this is very important to them, whether they should prioritize deepening their economic dependence on China over diversifying its trade relationships. So proposition is correct to point out that this debate is not whether you should connect with only one country or you should trade with as many countries as possible. So proposition comes here and they analyze that, first of all, they said that it's very long term and China works better. They come here and they prove right from the very start how China is a better alternative compared to other options like EU, USA, or other Asian countries. So first of all, they said that China's economy is changing a lot, the aging population. And China's problem is that they ship a lot of stuff to other countries, and China doesn't want to ship to other European countries, and Vietnam is the best alternative for them, right? And they also explained to us very clearly how will both countries keep trading, in which they said that Western countries, they have a huge amount of tariffs and the currency is extremely high, and China is the only basically the only option, the only country where the currency is okay, or they are able to trade with Vietnam the best. They also analyze how Vietnam is really stable, in which the people are united. China needs allies against the US, and it's also because of geographical locations, more land, etc. One thing they mentioned is on political values, for example, Communist Party, etc. So overall, these countries have similar values most of all. However, on opposition, right from the very first speech, as Prop has mentioned, they debated on the wrong side. But other than that, from the second speech, what they mentioned to us is that they talked about this is an illusion. This stability is completely flawed. They said that China and Vietnam are not interdependent because if Vietnam loses China, Vietnam has a bigger damage compared to China because China has more leverage. So given that China leaves Vietnam, then Vietnam will be in a very bad situation since, for example, there's lockdown, right? China has the upper hand. However, the question here, and even though you do provide the impact, which is more diverse, more resilient, the bigger question that proposition mentioned is to what extent, what is the likelihood that China will leave Vietnam and China will be isolated and then China will no longer trade with Vietnam anymore? Because in proposition, what they mentioned to us is that China, in the worst case, even if they want to be more isolated and they no longer do trading or they do trading less with Vietnam, first of all, they do not have the capacity for it. Second of all, because of overproduction, right? So their resources need to be sent somewhere. And also, China also want allies because, overall, they proved to me how China is a better alternative compared to the counterfactual, more stable political stance, non-changing parties, and also guarantee more stable trading partner, especially in a time when trading is very unstable. So in terms of which side provides better alternative or overall which country is a better alternative for Vietnam's trading partner, proposition clearly analyze how that is so, and even more, they also provide to us how the US or other factors is not good are not good partners for Vietnam. The first reason they pointed out is because of unstable tariffs, because US wants revenue, and the US dollar is consistently overvaluing, and that's why tariffs are needed. And Vietnam will be hit with like a big amount of tariffs. So overall, what proposition wins on is that they win on the factor of how Vietnam will be benefited in the first place. They provide more tangible impact. For example, better trading partners, the expense is not that high, and the outcomes are better in terms of like uncertainty and how, tariffs will not be imposed wrongly by them. However, on opposition, they did very little in terms of engagement, right? What they said to us, first of all, is that like it's very fragile, and even if it's very convenient, it comes at a cost of sovereignty, because if Vietnam has higher standard partners, they will innovate and they will upgrade more, which comes to the question is that how is your side any better than the other side? Because proposition, they mentioned about how China, they also have like the technology, they also have like a lot of benefits regarding the exceptional benefits that Vietnam will gain from China, for example, the manufacturing process or the technological advancement. So I think that what opposition lacks on is that opposition lacks on the engagement and the mechanism as to how on their side of the house, even if they diversify trade relationships, how is it better than deepening the economic dependence on China? As for proposition, they clearly mentioned how, first of all, number one, China makes a better trading partner. Number two, how US is a bad partner, or other Asian countries are bad partners. For example, it costs more, and like when it comes to the political factors, it's very unstable on their side of the house. But the last like metrics that I will weigh on is on how will Vietnam be benefited, and the possibility and likelihood most of all. During the last speeches, proposition mentioned how like the higher currency, and how like they also mentioned the history with other countries as well. Although this is only like slightly flagged out, I believe that what proposition can do in this debate is that they flip it, and they also clearly analyze three factors, which is important: the likelihood, what should Vietnam do in the first place, while opposition, they only look at the existential, like at the external factor, and they talked about how more diversification is important without proving to us how that is likely in the first place. So that's my reasoning for the verdict on why proposition wins this debate, and commiseration to opposition. Do you guys have any questions for the OA?